1 second, it is a grand final. The next, one player is on the ground and another is throwing a second punch. A winger gets hit with a 3-punch combination. A British and Irish Lion is trapped beneath an opponent. And in one unbelievable moment, a player leaves the pitch and takes the fight into the crowd. These are the moments when rugby players completely lost control. And the final incident may have decided a championship.
Flower here, keep an eye on that. That's a red card.
Rugby is one of the most physical sports in the world, but it depends on discipline. Players are allowed to tackle, clear rucks and collide at full speed. But the moment that aggression turns into retaliation, the entire match can change. A red card can destroy a game plan. A suspension can remove a star player for months. And one bad decision can become the moment a player is remembered for. This video is not about celebrating cheap shots. It is about 7 occasions when anger took over, the consequences that followed, and the line between playing hard and completely losing control.
Well, the penalty is against you, right? It's going to be a red card as well. You hit there and you punch the guy several times on the ground. Okay? It's a red card on the touch judge recommendation. Okay?
Stewie Dickinson, you have had a shocker.
December 2008, Munster against Clermont in the Heineken Cup. Jamie Cudmore and Paul O'Connell were two of the most confrontational locks in European rugby. Neither man was known for taking a backward step, so when pushing began around a ruck, the situation exploded quickly. Cudmore grabbed O'Connell and began throwing punches. O'Connell responded as players rushed in from both sides and the confrontation spread. The officials eventually separated them, but the punishments were not equal. O'Connell received a yellow card. Cudmore was sent off. Clermont had to finish a tight European match with 14 men, and Munster won 23-18. Cudmore later received a 5-week suspension. It was a classic example of retaliation, costing more than the original confrontation. But the next player lost control before the match had even properly begun.
Well, he was held back, was Bakkies Botha, but boy, that is not a good look.
Bakkies Botha built his reputation as one of rugby's great enforcers. Against New Zealand, in Auckland in 2010, however, his aggression crossed the line almost immediately. Inside the opening minute, Bakkies drove his head into All Black scrum half Jimmy Cowan during an off-ball clash. There was no fatigue and no pressure from a long, brutal match. The game had barely started. Botha remained on the field at the time, but the citing process caught what the officials had missed. He was suspended for 9 weeks and ruled out of the rest of the Tri-Nations. South Africa had selected him to bring physical pressure. Instead, one moment of retaliation removed him from the competition. And if that looked sudden, the next explosion happened in a matter of seconds.
It's a shove. No more than that. Tuilagi now throws a punch. Ashton, and bang. Well, Tuilagi will be cited, and Chris Ashton has had an injustice done to him. That is disgraceful.
Leicester against Northampton, Premiership semi-final, a place in the final at stake. Chris Ashton pushed Manu Tuilagi from behind after the ball had moved away. Tuilagi hit the ground, jumped back to his feet and answered with 3 punches. 2 came from the left. The third was a huge right hand that opened a cut above Ashton's eye. Somehow, both players received yellow cards. Ashton needed stitches, but stayed in the match. Tuilagi also returned after 10 minutes, and Leicester went on to win 11-3. The disciplinary panel later reviewed the footage and banned Tuilagi for 5 weeks. Ashton accepted his apology after the match, but that did not change what had happened. A minor shove had turned into a 3-punch attack during a knockout game. The next incident was even harder to defend, because the victim never saw it coming. 30 seconds into Wales against New Zealand in Cardiff, Bradley Davies was running away from the ball. Andrew Hore came from behind and caught him with a swinging arm. Davies dropped immediately and was taken to hospital. Play continued and Hore was not punished during the match, but the television footage made the incident impossible to ignore. He later received a 5-week suspension. What makes this moment so shocking is the lack of any immediate contest. Davies was not carrying the ball. He was not braced for contact. There was no face-to-face confrontation. It was one decision, made away from the play, injured an opponent, and removed Hore from New Zealand's next test. But the next player did something even more unbelievable. He left the pitch and took the confrontation into the stands. Toulouse against Ulster in January 2007. Trevor Brennan was near the touchline when an exchange with an Ulster supporter escalated. Instead of ignoring the crowd and staying with his team, Brennan climbed over the barrier, entered the spectator area, and struck the fan. The pictures were surreal. A professional player had left the field of play to confront someone in the stands. Whatever had been said, the moment Brennan crossed that barrier, this stopped being an on-field flashpoint. Rugby's normal explanations no longer applied. There was no ruck, no tackle, and no teammate to protect. He was initially banned for life. On appeal, that sanction was reduced to 5 years. But Brennan had already announced his retirement. Players and supporters are separated for a reason. Brennan did not simply lose control of a confrontation. He abandoned the boundary that keeps the contest on the pitch. And yet the next act happened inside a ruck, almost hidden beneath the bodies.
Oh, he's a lot of peeing. He is a lot of peeing.
The 2012 LV Cup final between Northampton and Leicester produced one of the most disturbing disciplinary incidents in English rugby. Leicester hooker Rob Hawkins became trapped at the bottom of a ruck. Northampton's Callum took hold of Hawkins' arm and hyperextended it. Hawkins suffered a broken elbow. There were no wild punches and no mass brawl to distract everyone. That is what made the footage so uncomfortable. The movement appeared controlled rather than chaotic. The disciplinary panel found that Clark's action was intentional, although it did not find that he intended to cause a serious injury. He was suspended for 32 weeks. At the time, one of the longest bans handed down in English professional rugby. This is the difference between playing hard and exploiting a vulnerable opponent. Once a player is trapped and unable to protect himself, responsibility becomes even greater. The same issue makes our next incident infamous more than 2 decades later. During the British and Irish Lions 2001 tour of Australia, the Lions faced the New South Wales Waratahs in Sydney. Midway through the second half, Ronan O'Gara and Duncan McRae became tangled on the ground. McRae rolled O'Gara onto his back, pinned him beneath his body, and repeatedly punched him in the face. O'Gara could not properly defend himself. By the time teammates pulled McRae away, the Irish fly half had suffered severe bruising, swelling, and a wound that required 8 stitches. McRae was shown a red card. The incident also ignited further fighting, with 4 more players later sent to the sin bin. The Lions still won 41-24, but the match is remembered less for the rugby than for the image of O'Gara's battered face. McRae received a 7-week ban and apologised. Looking back now, that suspension feels surprisingly short for an attack involving up to a dozen punches on a player trapped underneath him. But our number one moment happened on an even bigger stage, and the punishment began immediately.
It's a send-off for Ben Flower in the first 2 minutes of the grand final.
Completely lost the plot. He knows it. Sean Wayne, the Wigan coach, will be furious.
The 2014 Super League Grand Final, Wigan Warriors against St Helens at Old Trafford. Less than 2 minutes had been played when Lance Hohaya caught Ben Flower with an off-ball forearm. Flower turned, chased him, and landed a punch that knocked Hohaya to the ground. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Flower stood over him and threw a second punch while Hohaya was lying on the turf. The referee produced a red card, making Flower the first player sent off in a Super League Grand Final. Wigan now had to play virtually the entire match with 12 men. St Helens won 14-6. Flower later received a 6-month suspension amounting to 13 matches. Hohaya received a 1-match ban for the forearm that started the confrontation. But the second punch was the image that defined the night. This is why it ranks number 1. It happened in the biggest domestic match of the season. It happened before the game had settled. The opponent was already down, and the consequence was not delayed until a disciplinary hearing. Flower's teammates had to survive 78 minutes, a man short because he could not stop after the first punch. One moment of lost control may have changed the destination of the trophy. Rugby is not remarkable because players never lose control. It is remarkable because control is demanded in a sport designed to test it. Players collide at full speed, fight for inches, and absorb pain while making decisions under enormous pressure. The toughest players are not always the ones who hit hardest. Often, they are the ones who can feel anger rising and still walk away. Every incident in this video had a trigger: a shove, a forearm, an off-ball clash, words from the crowd, or pressure inside a ruck. But a trigger is not an excuse. The laws prohibit physical abuse and retaliation because one uncontrolled second can injure an opponent, cost a team a final, and follow a player for the rest of his career. Which of these incidents was the most shocking? And is there another moment that should have made the list? Tell us in the comments. and subscribe to Ruckflix for more of rugby's wildest, toughest and most unforgettable moments.